What's up, 119ers? How you doing today? What's going on in the world? A lot of troublesome stuff going on in the world. And for once, we're not talking about coronavirus. So I want to talk to you today about the First Amendment. Now, before you freak out, I'm not going to be doing a lesson for each amendment, okay? Because it really is the First Amendment that garners the most attention from the Supreme Court and the most attention from lawmaking bodies across the country. So, the First Amendment, a lot of people say that it's freedom of speech and that this allows Americans to say and do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and to whomever they want. And none of that is true. Okay. So I want to go over the First Amendment with you today, especially because of all the things that are happening in the city, in the country, the protests, the peaceful protests, the violent looters. There's a lot happening in our society today. So I think that this will help you make hopefully a little more sense of it if you're watching the news with your parents or you're talking about it. So first, let's look at the First Amendment. Inquiry question: why is freedom of expression an integral part of living in a free society? And the word today is expression, just in case I know you probably understand what the word expression means, but sometimes it helps to define a word, especially in relation to a question. So the process of making your thoughts and feelings known. So to express yourself is to make whatever is inside known to the outside. That's expression. And the First Amendment gives us the freedom to do that, to let what's inside be known to the outside without any sort of penalty or repercussions, hopefully. Okay, so let's get going. Many people think the First Amendment is just free speech, but it goes much further. As you saw in the beginning, I didn't call it, why is free speech important? I said, why is expression? Because free speech is only a small part of the First Amendment. It actually goes much further than that. So this part of the lesson on your answer sheet is asking you to match the actual verbiage with the clauses within the First Amendment. So within the First Amendment, there are 5 clauses. You have the freedom of speech, which we kind of already know. Everyone knows that, speech is part of the First Amendment. But, expression can be much more than just verbal speech. So we have petitions, which we spoke about earlier in the year. We have freedom of the press, we have freedom of religion, and we have freedom of assembly. So what I did here is I broke down the First Amendment into its 5 clauses by highlighting the 5 clauses in different colors. What I need you to do is match up the clause with the verbiage, okay? So for this one, I mean, or of the press, that little blue part, that's part of the press clause. Or the right of the people peacefully to assemble, that's assembly. So take a look at the actual words, and you're going to put the actual words onto your answer sheet. And this will help you get familiar with the actual terminology and the actual verbiage that the founding fathers used when they made the First Amendment. Okay? So let's go through the actual clauses just so we understand. That's why the First Amendment is called the freedom of expression and not just freedom of speech. So first clause. They're not going to be in order, okay? I'm just kind of going through them. So first, in the United States, the government cannot tell you what religion you can or cannot practice. So this is basically saying that whatever you want to believe in, whatever you want to worship, whatever rituals and traditions you want to do in the United States, no one can say, okay, that is not allowed here. On the other hand, the government can't adopt, let's say, an official state religion. So we can't say that America is a Christian country. We can't say that. It's part of the First Amendment. So this creates what we call a secular society, where you have a separation of church and state. And you guys will probably get more into this in 11th grade, but just know that in the United States of America, we have a split between our government and religion. They are not supposed to intermingle. They are not supposed to interlace. They need to remain separate. And there was recently a court case where they had the Ten Commandments. If you don't know what the Ten Commandments are, God gave them to Moses in the Old Testament, and they're obviously part of religious doctrine, religious dogma for Judeo-Christian people. So the Ten Commandments were placed outside of a government courthouse, and people took issue with that. They took umbrage with that, and they said the Ten Commandments should have no place in a government courthouse. And I believe that the court ruled that the Ten Commandments had to be taken from the courthouse. Okay, so that's just kind of like an example. So church and state, we call that a secular society. A secular society is when you have a separation between those two. And that is all part of the first clause of the First Amendment. U.S. government cannot actively try to silence the press, which is the media, or the news and reporters and things like that. And this is coming to the spotlight as of recent times because of obviously Donald Trump is one of his most prolific claims that he loves saying. It's like become a catchphrase, like a motto, like a rallying cry at some point is you are fake news. So he has, and I'm not saying that the media is fair to Donald Trump. In a lot of cases, they most certainly are not fair to Donald Trump. But it's kind of a two-way street. So he was famously shown, telling CNN anchor, "You are fake news," and a lot of people said, "Well, you're trying to actively silence us. You're trying to actively discredit us." And it turns out that the press does have freedom, but they cannot straight up lie about a person. That's called libel and sedition, which you'll probably get to more in 11th grade as well. So unless the press straight up lies, which is one of most Donald Trump's. So freedom of the press can go so far, but the press is not free to make up stories, which is what Donald Trump says. Okay, now talk about relatable. This is important. So the United States government cannot stop a peaceful assembly or protest. So right now there's many protests happening within our city. I'm sure most of you have actually heard. I know, I live in Glendale, and the other night we were sitting outside and we could hear the people chanting and shouting, but they were being peaceful. So there's nothing wrong with that. As long as, they have something, like I said, expression. There's something inside that they want to be known outside. So peaceful protest is always okay in the United States. We are allowed to peacefully assemble. We are allowed to peacefully protest. It's part of the Constitution. Why? Because there are many societies and there are many countries that you are not allowed to do this. That even if you are peacefully assembling, right? They're just holding up signs. They're holding up signs. They want to let people know that they're upset. They want people to know that there's an injustice that needs to be changed. In a lot of countries, China, okay, these people who are peacefully protesting will be tear gassed, will be, run over by tanks, look up Tiananmen Square. So that's okay in our country. We're allowed to peacefully protest. Now, we were talking about whether or not the Boston Tea Party was a peaceful protest, right? But it did include the destruction of property, and a lot of people would lean towards the Boston Tea Party being not peaceful. And when we have not a not peaceful protest or a non-peaceful assembly, we call that a riot. And that's also something that's happening in our country right now, obviously because of the murder of George Floyd. So, that's something we can look to and look out for. U.S. government cannot stop you from petitioning for a redress of grievance. Now, we study this in detail. I'm not going to go over it too much, but you can see here, this is the Olive Branch petition. This is the Declaration of Independence. These are both petitions that we sent to the king that we were asking for a redress of grievances, or we were asking for him to fix what was wrong. Redress of grievance, redress fix of grievance, something that we felt was wrong. And, obviously we know that the Olive Branch petition, he tore it up, get out of here. And the Declaration of Independence started a war, the American Revolution. So we wanted to put into our Constitution that it's okay to petition the government for a redress of grievance. And I gave you a good example, right? We learned about this when when the world was back to normal. Uh, I gave you an example in class. We were talking about the Death Star being built and how the someone petitioned the United States government to build the Death Star, and they responded. And hopefully you remember that lesson. Hopefully that's something that stuck out in your head. And I found this cool GIF of the Death Star being built, what would need to go into it. And I think this is why the White House explained why we can't have a Death Star. It just looks very, very complicated. Looks very tricky, and it has probably technology we don't have yet. But cool nonetheless. I love the GIF. Finally, the thing that people associate with the First Amendment the most is probably freedom of speech. And, speech can be in a couple of different, it can be expressed in different ways. Speech doesn't always have to be verbal. It can oftentimes be symbolic. So this young lady here, she is expressing her freedom of speech by actually taping up her mouth and showing that there's injustice in the fact that she cannot speak. I thought this was a pretty interesting photograph. I thought the great symbolism in here, and with the words "I can't breathe." Also, Colin Kaepernick, who he famously, I'm not sure if you know, during the national anthem, he would take a knee. He would kneel during the national anthem, and this caused quite the controversy, quite the uproar. So much so that he was fired from his job as quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. And that was also controversial. But it turns out, as you'll see in the video, you cannot just say and do whatever you want and say free speech. Okay? If you work for a company that's not part of the government, you are not allowed to criticize the boss without there being repercussions and consequences. And being that the NFL and the San Francisco 49ers are, in fact, a company, it is a business, and the 49ers decided that they were not willing to be part of Colin Kaepernick's protest, albeit peaceful. Okay, and if you don't know, he was actually protesting the injustice for Black Americans and their treatment from the police, and this is like the beginning of the whole thing. So it's interesting parallel. Another thing, so you're probably shocked at this image here of the flag burning. I know it's for me even I find flag burning to be disgraceful. I think it's disgusting. I think that anyone who does it is disrespecting all the people, the lives of the men and women who fought and died for this country, for this flag to fly. That's my own personal opinion. But this is also protected under free speech, burning a flag, because you are making a political statement. And normally, political statements are always covered by free speech. So I know there's like a lot of back and forth and things like that. The video here, this video is pretty good. And he explains a lot about free speech and the First Amendment. And most of the questions for this lesson are from this video. So if you if you have any problems, just let me know. But I think the video does a good job of really going more in depth and in detail with some of the ins and outs of the First Amendment. Okay, First Amendment covered. I want to go over the Bill of Rights scenarios that we did the other day for homework. Well, whatever this is, everything's homework. I will say this, that I was going through the answers and there were a lot of mistakes. No big deal. Okay, no big deal. There were some mistakes, so I do ask that you pay attention to what we're about to go over, or to fix some of these mistakes. Don't worry if you have mistakes. I'm not taking any points off. Okay, just if you can't fix it, I'm not taking points off. Just make sure you get it done. Okay. So scenario one, Governor Andrew Cuomo has activated New York State National Guard to help deal with the coronavirus testing and tracing. That's something that happened. Okay. I tried to make all these scenarios relatable. The New York State National Guard soldiers are knocking on doors in Glendale, Queens to see if they can use houses to stay in until the pandemic is over. Okay, so obviously, if you want the National Guard staying in your house, you're allowed to do that. But the National Guard, which is part of the military, is not allowed to come to your house. Why? Because in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, the Third Amendment says they are not allowed to. Why? Because during the American Revolution, the British soldiers were doing this very same thing, and boy, did it upset people. So the Third Amendment is the Anti-Quartering Act, and I have someone who will help me get this answer out. Amy 701, I took your answer. Very nice job. Okay, let's get going. 2. President Donald Trump demands that New York State is to open from its quarantine status because people are losing their jobs and losing businesses and losing money and people are losing lives. He does have a point on that. The governor, though, feels that opening may be unsafe and demands that New York State continues to be closed because it will save lives. He also has a point on that. Both good points, but because of the 10th Amendment, which we studied, we had a whole lesson on it, federal and state powers, there are rules, and anything not given to the federal government is given to the state government. So the governor does have final say on when to open up this country. And that was Jaden, my friend 707. Good work. Here we go. A person during a recent protest is caught looting items from the Chanel store on Fifth Avenue. Yes, this happened 2 nights ago. The person is arrested and sent to prison without receiving a trial because the person was caught in the act. There really was no need for a trial. So let's say you're coming out of Chanel with handbags with the tag still on them. You got glasses on. You got Chanel hat. I don't know if they make hats, but you got jewelry. You got everything on, right? And the police go, what? And you got broken glass, all over you. And it's very clear and it's very obvious that you have just stolen all of these things from Chanel. There's video cameras showing you taking the items, right? The police see you covered in glass and Chanel. Why do we need a trial? Why do we need to go through the whole process? Just send him to jail. We know he did it. No, can't do it. Because in the country, we have Fifth Amendment, which is trial by jury, something we also call due process. Due process means that if you get accused of doing something, you have due process before you go to jail. Due process is like trial by jury, your right to a lawyer. It's basically all the things that make sure that you can't just be thrown in jail for no reason. So it's important. Vlad. Vlad is in 707. Okay. A student decided to create a petition to stop the building of a homeless shelter in Glendale, Queens, something also happening in our neighborhood. The mayor decided that this student's petition goes against what he thinks is right. The mayor has the NYPD come and stop the petition from getting any more signatures because he is tired of hearing about it. Okay, hopefully you guys are like, oh, this one's easy. First Amendment, freedom of expression, and Anthony 707. There you go, buddy. All right. 5. New York State passes a law that bans all firearms within the state's borders. Even firearms meant for hunting or self-protection are now illegal. The NYPD are the only people allowed to possess firearms. I hope you're also like, oh, easy one. This is the Second Amendment. You can't have the people having their protection taken away. And hunting rights are important too, because there are still people who go into the woods and kill animals and eat them. That still happens. So kind of hard to do with a bow and arrow. Never tried, never went hunting, but I'm sure it is. Second Amendment right to bear arms. Kimberly, 704. Nice. 6. A student at PSIS 119 is caught stealing candy bar from Home Deli. The student receives a trial and the judge demands the student pay back $100,000 to Home Deli for the candy bar. Okay. This is what we would call unusual, cruel, and unusual punishment. The candy bar is $1, and the judge is making him pay back extra $999,099.99. All right, so $100,000 to Home Deli for the candy bar. This is the 8th Amendment, which protects from cruel and unusual punishment. This is important too because there's a lot of societies out there that when they catch you doing something wrong, they end up like whipping you and caning you for. There was a guy who got caught spray painting in Singapore, right? An American. Stupid thing to do. Stupid. Okay, not a smart thing to do, because the Singapore, police, was back in the '90s, I think. Their punishment for spray painting, vandalization, was caning, which they took a stick and just beat this American, not to death, but like 100 times. In our country, that would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. You are not protected by the Bill of Rights in other countries. Make sure you know that. You are not protected by the Bill of Rights on Indian land either, Native American land. Indian reservations, Native American reservations. You are not protected, so that's important to know. All right. Hannah, 702. Well done. 7. NYPD finds out that there is a major drug dealer in Glendale, and the drug dealer drives a black Nissan Maxima. NYPD decided to search every black Nissan Maxima in Glendale without a warrant in hopes of finding the drugs. This actually happened 2 nights ago on my street. So, not that they were searching random Maximas, but a black guy in a black Nissan Maxima got arrested. Anyway, hope that was no one without a warrant in hopes of finding drugs. So that's not okay. The police cannot do that, even if you think, well, that's a good way to find out who has the drugs. No. Okay. Fourth Amendment, search and seizure without a warrant. Police cannot just bust into your car, come into your house without a warrant or something they call probable cause. So if you are driving around and there's no reason for to be searched, the police cannot just search your car. They need to have a warrant. Now, if you open your window and the police is looking in and they see, some alcohol, open containers, or some illegal drugs or something like that, they can then search your car because that's called probable cause. So they don't need a warrant then. Eric, 704. There you go. Moving on. 8. A man is caught stealing the VR game setup and some balls from the ball pit from Laser Bounce in Atlas Mall. This really didn't happen. I just made this up. The man is arrested and awaiting trial. The man has to wait 10 years before pleading his case in front of a judge. So the only problem with this is the 10 years. Imagine having to wait 10 years to plead your case for stealing some balls from the ball pit at Laser Bounce. Well, the VR game setup, that's probably expensive. That's probably $10,000, $20,000. But, a couple balls from the ball pit, no big deal. The 10 years, though, we have the right to a speedy trial. This is how kings and dictators and other bad rulers would do things. They would say, okay, yeah, you'll get a trial for, defacing the statue of me. You get a trial, but you're going to have to wait 10 years for that trial. So that was the easy way to silence people who were causing issues. This is the Sixth Amendment, which also includes some other things, but the right to a speedy trial, get stuff done. And Hussein, 703, this is one of the harder ones. It's one of the harder ones because this part of the Sixth Amendment that says a right to a speedy trial is just a small little part. All right. 9. A woman accidentally hits a person on their bicycle while driving on Myrtle Avenue. The woman has a trial and the jury finds that the woman had a medical issue that caused her to have the accident and it was not intentional. The district attorney decides he was not happy with the jury's decision and tries the trial again with a new jury of bike riders. So this time he took a bunch of people who rode bikes and said, okay, we're going to try this woman again. The new jury finds her guilty and she is sent to jail. Not okay in the United States of America. We call this double jeopardy, where you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. If you are found innocent by one trial, you can't then, innocent by one jury, you cannot just go and get another jury of bike riders and then try the trial again until you get what you want. That cannot happen. The government cannot do that. Seventh Amendment, double jeopardy. Zoria, 707. Very good. Last one, almost done. The United States government decides that the citizens of the United States have the rights listed in the Constitution and nothing else. All the rights are taken away that are not specifically listed in the Constitution. This is a weird one, but I just tell you right now, it's the Ninth Amendment. Ninth Amendment is protection of rights. Ninth Amendment basically says that these rights in here, in the Bill of Rights, cannot be taken away. They are protected, meaning you can't. The only way to get rid of an amendment is another amendment, which you'll learn next year with Miss Monty or Mr. Battallero, or me. Who knows? Okay, but that's the only way to get rid of an amendment. This is protecting that, saying that these rights are staying, and also that the United States government, anything that's in the Constitution, not listed to the federal, state governments, are the rights of the people. So that's the Ninth Amendment. Tricky one, weird one. Ivy 701, very good. Maybe use process of elimination. Maybe you use deduction. I don't know, but you got it right, Ivy. Well done. Okay. Stay safe, guys. A lot going on. I am going to probably do a lesson next week on the rights of protesters. Talk a little bit more about the situation in the country. It's a very hot topic. There's a lot going on. So I figured that you guys would want to learn about it, talk about it, whatever. Keep doing your exit projects. Exit project due date is June 15th. That's coming up. I'll be doing a live lesson like the one I did last time, where we're going to talk about the slideshow and how I want the slideshow to look. You do not have to present the slideshow. Okay, so that should be a major, right? That's it. All right, guys. I hope you are doing well. Adios to you and your families and everyone. 26 minutes. Okay.